There's that metal tee. And then over here, that's another one. Like I said, you can find them in a lot of backyards here in the South. Welcome to Big Time Micro Farm. I thought I would start by showing you our Muscadines at Southern Draw. It's a Southern grape of Muscadine. If you don't have a Southern Draw, I don't even know if you can say Muscadine right. But anyway, we have these Muscadines, and I was going to show you how we grow them here in the South. Now, I want you to notice that metal tee there. You can't quite see it as well over here, but the metal tee, what that is an old clothesline. You'll find these old metal tees in most yards, old yards in the South. And so you can grab those pretty quick. Put you some wire on there, some 9-gauge wire. Put that wire on there. Of course, you got to anchor it back to the ground. You anchor that to the ground, and you got you a nice Muscadine trellis. Now, I want you to notice something about this Muscadine trellis. If you get underneath here, you'll notice a lot of those Muscadines, most of them are just going to hang right underneath there. You got all the vines out of the way, and it makes it real easy just to come underneath here and pick your Muscadine. Look here, that big old bunch right there. Just grab them up. And there you go. And so this one actually has a few lines on it. You see right here, I actually used some clothesline wire. I got some 9-gauge in there. And this thing grows incredible. And you see, my Muscadines are real close together. We do a heavy prune, or if you around here, if you're thinking about a prune, we often call it a trim. Man, we trim these things back. That's what we do in the South, we trim instead of prune. So if you ever hear somebody say something about, I'm gonna trim that means I'm gonna prune it back. But we do some heavy pruning. It makes for some really good grapes. Look at that. Anyway, so it's in season right now. Here you can see better right here. There's that metal tee. And then over here, that's another one. Like I said, you can find them in a lot of backyards here in the South. And if you look, the sun's gonna give us a little bit of a glare. I'm gonna try to get that right there. But I got 2 trellises right next to each other. In fact, I have a third, and this is a little bit different system. What I did here was I made a trellis that looks a whole lot more like a traditional grape trellis. See down here? And the reason I did this, and this is where you'll prune. I'll prune this year. I'll prune that whenever we get a chance. Or when we get to that time of the year, I'll make sure I put a video up. But we'll prune this back. And of course, this is what will grow back next year. But I like this because it reminds me of what Jesus said. He says, I'm the vine and you are the branches. And we know that we get our life from him. And so every time I come out here and see this one, it just reminds me of what he said. I also have a different trellis over here. I tried this one here. This is some Ruby Crisp. And probably what you see here is what you see a lot of Muscadine, I guess, vineyards now. Not that I have a vineyard, but I have some Muscadines. Anyway, you have the one line here. This is actually some airline cable. I do have some 9 down there, but this is airline cable. And you just let it run, and then it cascades over. It just cascades over there. And so we had quite a few, but the deer got into these. The deer did not get into these. And I think what happened is that these trellises were so close together that the deer were afraid, or the deer are afraid to come in between this. Because if you know anything about deer, they're afraid to get in somewhere that they can't get out of. And so, well, you know, I think that's part of it. And if you'll see right on the other side of my Muscadines right here, I've got these blackberries. And of course, I've got that trellis there. So that really keeps the deer out. The deer are really scared to come back in here. So we'll be picking these. picking these and putting them in the freezer, making sure they are ready to go to be squeezed, pressed, juiced. Again, southern word for juice would be squeeze. We're gonna make sure they get juiced. And then what we found last year is that if we go ahead and pick all these during season, that we can put them in the freezer, and then we only have 1 day of juicing. We don't have to get the press out and get it working and going for the day. And we also found that if you freeze these Muscadines anyway, they juice so much better. Anyway, we'll make sure that you get a video of that when we start to juice those. When you juice them, when you put them in that press, man, that makes some of the best jelly ever. And if you like to drink juice, there it is. Drink you some juice. But those are my Muscadines. Just thought I'd give you a quick tour. Thought you might want to check it out. Talk to you guys later.